it's our community. Welcome. I'm Mary Davidson, and I have somebody for you to meet. His name is Joel Goldman, and Joel is an author of mysteries and thrillers.
Absolutely.
And you don't look like, come in with the black cape and the black hat like the Green Hornet. No, you don't look like that.
Well, that's good, because that way I can sneak up on you.
That's right, that's right, that's right. And the attaboys on the book, one of them says about Shakedown, because that's the one I read, but he has a number of them out, and we'll talk about that later. But I read Shakedown, and on the front of the book it says, locked and loaded and full of the blood of character and the gritty detail that make up the truth.
And they wouldn't lie, because otherwise they wouldn't put it on the book.
That is right. But you know what? It's not. It's the blood of character and not blood and guts.
That's right.
And talk about that a little bit, because you do have a choice. You can fill it up with sex and blood and guts, but you haven't chosen to do that, which I actually, as a reader, appreciate.
Well, it's a conscious choice.
Uh-huh.
We talk about that among ourselves as authors, and it's really a question of how much of that is necessary. And I'm much more interested in how violence affects the characters than in being a voyeur to the violence. So that's where the blood and guts of character, to me, are much more interesting.
I think so too. I do. How do you, you've written a lot of these books. How do you come up with an idea? I mean, I could sit there and stare at the thing for years and probably not have a thought in the world about what to do. How do you do that?
Well, there are two things. I always start with the same question, and I think it's a question that drives a lot of fiction, and that is, what happens when things go wrong, especially when you don't think anyone's watching. So I'm interested in how people respond to the unexpected, to the adverse unexpected. And when they think that maybe they can get away with something, or they have to try to get away with something. So that's one piece of it. And the other piece is to always have my eyes and ears open. And this book, Shakedown, is a great example of that, because there are a couple of things that I drew on that are factual. I read a little story in the Kansas City Star several years before I wrote this book about caves in Argentina that were the remnants of mining operations.
Yes.
And there was a little blurb story in the Inside Metropolitan pages about some teenagers who got in a rowboat and were on a little lake that actually fed into this cave, and they decided to play Tom Sawyer, and drifted on into the cave thinking they could find their way out, consumed by the pitch black, and they spent the night in there until somebody came and found them. And I just saw that article, and I tore it out, and I put it in my file, and I thought, I'm going to use that one day. And then I had the opportunity to participate in the FBI Citizens Academy, and where FBI agents, who are terrific people, very dedicated and skillful, told us about what they did. And one of the stories they told, one of the agents told, is the story that this book opens with, about the surveillance in the crack house. And as an author, you have to be willing to steal from everybody.
Nothing imitates life better than life.
That's right. So I take these kinds of things, these nuggets, and I file them away. And
in your nugget file.
In my nugget file, not my chicken nugget file.
That's right.
And I look for opportunities to use them. And I'm always interested in the overarching question, though, of how we respond to the unexpected challenges.
Well, it's the psychology of the human endeavor.
Yes.
It's always interesting. The character, Jack Davis, in your book, is sort of like you. And the other thing he's kind of like is Sam Spade cleaned up.
Well, let me do the second part first.
Okay.
The modern mystery really has its roots in the Western. The lone gunman, the gunslinger who comes to town and cleans up all the bad guys. That's the iconic figure that found its way into the hard-boiled novels, and certainly all of those, Dashiell Hammett and all of the others, Sam Spade immortalized in The Maltese Falcon, and Philip Marlowe, immortalized.
But Arthur
as
Conan
well.
Doyle changed the mystery forever.
Well,
Don't you think so?
no, I think.
Well, the hero came out there.
Well, that's a different kind of hero. The kind of the Sherlock Holmesian hero.
Yes.
Is sort of the expert in the closed room puzzle.
Okay.
Okay. Sam Spade, Philip Marlowe, Jack
Davis. Yes.
Jack Davis are much more in the tradition of that iconic figure who comes in, he's sort of a loner, although Jack is not, and cleans up goes after the bad guys, who has sort of a passionate sense of justice that drives him, as opposed to just, I want to figure this puzzle out.
Well, they kind of do what they do and try to do it without shooting themselves in the foot.
Or elsewhere.
Or elsewhere. That's right. That's
or
right.
Elsewhere.
But I like Jack Davis, and he is a hero. Are there certain traits that you attribute to heroes in your books? Because Jack Davis isn't the only one.
Right. It's a great question, because heroes can take all different kinds of forms. You can have Superman, who is pure, and but he has this kryptonite flaw. But human heroes are more interesting because of the flaws that they have, and their capacity to overcome those flaws, and their willingness to sacrifice. And so, in addition to sort of a fundamental sense of right and wrong and a commitment to that, I think what makes a hero in literature, or I suppose in life, is a willingness to sacrifice self, and a commitment to those ideals, and a capacity to overcome flaws.
Yeah. I think that's good. The female heroine, Kate has an interesting job.
Yes, she does.
And she is a person who detects traits in people because she analyzes juries and witnesses or whatever.
Kate is an expert in what's called the facial action coding system, which is real.
Do you know anybody that does that?
I don't know anyone who does it. The NBC TV show Lie to Me uses the same format, but this book came first.
We need to make that point clear.
Yes, make that clear. I'm not asking for royalties from NBC. I'm a big-hearted guy.
That's right.
But she is able to detect microscopic facial action movements that indicate truthfulness or deceit. And she comes at this sort of, in a way that Jack is completely uncomfortable with. Jack Davis is like Jack Webb from Dragnet. Give me the facts. Give me the hard evidence. Something he can grab a hold of, or somebody he can grab a hold of. And Kate is more introspective. She's more analytical. She's looking for things that are behind the mask. And Jack doesn't trust his ability to do that.
And they become close, but not too close. We can't give away too much. We don't want to do that.
No,
but
we have to sell the other books.
That's right. But I will ask you this. You have a number of characters in Shakedown. Who would your favorite character be if you had to choose one?
I guess it'd have to be Jack.
Okay.
If
it isn't, we're in trouble.
Yeah, I guess we are. I guess we are in trouble. But I do like all the characters. Even I like the bad guys.
Yeah.
A lot of readers will tell you that they enjoy the villains as much or more they do the heroes.
Well, because you don't make them absolutely disreputable. I mean, there is something redeeming in everybody, I would suppose. We like to think that anyway.
I'll join with you on that.
Who was the most difficult to construct? Because you have to construct these people.
Yeah, you do, and I'll tell you, they sort of evolve. There's a cliche about writing that you get to know your characters like walking with them down the country road. Yeah. And for me, it's true. I don't know all the things that they're going to do. Oftentimes, it just happens sort of, it feels spontaneous. I don't know all the things that they're going to say or do.
Well, they're probably bits and pieces of people that you know that you have kind of glommed together into one person. Like Jack Davis. Jack Davis is probably a conglomerate.
Well, I suppose no writer can separate his or her life experiences from the writing. So whether it's conscious or not, that feeds into the writing. But when you say that, people always ask me, can I be in the book? And I always say, anyone, you can all be. Mary, you can be in a book. You just have to choose one each from the following 3 categories: hero or villain, living or dead, naked or dressed. And the most popular choice is dead, naked villain.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think I'm not quite ready for
that. Okay. Your call.
The other, character study is important. The other thing, particularly in thrillers and mysteries, because I am an avid reader of mysteries, is the plot. Because if I get it figured out in the first 25 pages, we got a problem. And constructing that plot, putting that plot together so there is enough convolution in it that you can't figure it out, there are enough clues in it so that it keeps you interested, and you don't have to have a deus ex machina come down and take all the characters up. You got to end sometime.
Right.
So how do you do that? Do you chart it out? How do you do that?
Well, I want to touch on one thing that you mentioned.
Okay.
You have to be fair with the reader. Like you say, you don't want to get to the end of the book and an alien lands in the backyard and that solves all the problems.
Right.
You can't you can't do that. And I've had people read these books, and some will say, "Gosh, I didn't get it till the end," and then there are people, "Oh, I got it on the first 5 pages." So you have to construct it in a way that is fair to the reader, that makes sense. Okay, it has to make sense in the end, but there have to be enough wrong turns and cul-de-sacs and things like that that will lead people astray and bring them back.
But not so much that they have to go back and read 3 pages and say, "Oh,
right.
How did that happen?" Because
I've
read them that you've got to go back and you have to.
That's right. If you make them feel like they're performing in the Cirque du Soleil,
that's right.
You've got a problem.
You got a problem. You do.
So for me, I don't chart it out.
Oh,
I don't outline it. Writers go either way. I think about it a lot, and I make notes. And I keep a file, a Word on my computer, where I'm posing questions that I want answered, or have ideas about how something may work itself out.
But you have right at 400 pages.
Yes.
Is that about normal?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. And so it's keeping a lot of balls up in the air. And sometimes I have to go back and change something because something I thought was going to happen didn't, or something that did happen that I thought would lead to something else doesn't. The book and I have a relationship, but it's not one of me having control over the book. Sometimes it's the other way around.
The other way around. And you also have to be careful with the characters that you put in there, because I remember I interviewed an author this some years ago, and a character came in and all of a sudden it was gone. I mean, and that truly was whisked away.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful that the characters that you put in are people that either have something particular that you need them to do right there, or they follow through.
Yeah. Everything in the book, you have to be able to justify everything in the book on the basis of one or of two things or both. And those are that they either advance plot or character, or both. And if they don't do that, then you have to have a good reason.
Well, and you also have to be careful that they're not contrived.
Yes.
Because that turns your readers off
Yeah.
quickly. Well, none of the above negative things were true.
Thank you.
I stuck right with you to page 397.
Sorry I shorted you by 3 pages.
I know. I was going to bring that up, actually.
Yeah, no
Joel.
refunds.
No. But I do have to talk about another area of writing for that book, and this is research. And you talk about guns and calibers and locations and police work and dirty cops. I mean, you know, what do you know about guns?
Not too much. Not from personal experience.
I was going to say.
My dad hunted, and he had a gun case in our house, and but I was never attracted to that. You know, research is part of what you have to do, and the internet makes a lot of that very easy. Yeah. But another part of the research, which I really enjoy, is the research about different parts of Kansas City.
Yeah.
Because
well, we're both natives here.
Yes,
so, yeah.
I'm fourth generation Kansas City. Kansas City is, when I say Kansas City, I mean the whole metropolitan area. It has such a diverse and rich and interesting history. Everything that's happened in America has played out in Kansas City and still does. And there's no end to the opportunities to place stories in.
And you did a really good job of that. And it makes it kind of interesting for those of us who live around here.
Good.
And you were also, I have to say, Joel, very good, because you didn't use a gun that shot a hole 3 feet wide in anybody. So the calibers evidently were correct.
Yeah. Or knocked somebody 20 feet back and through a wall, and they
break their.
They did pinwheels and got up and shook the whole thing off.
That's right. Now, a picture of life on the street. You're talking, and I'm not going to talk too much about the plot because I want people to read the book, and I don't want to give it away. But you have some life on the street that runs through this book. Now, you have to decorate the set.
Yes.
And doing that is difficult, I would think, because the set has to be decorated so that the book is a good read.
It does. You have to create a sense of place, and for me, place becomes a character in the book. If place is done well, then the reader relates to that place and recognizes it as being just as important as any two-legged character. And so I try to do that with the different parts of the city. And this book, a lot of it takes place in Kansas City, Kansas.
It does, yeah.
And so, and I've spent time in all of those areas that I write about. So having a sense of what those places are like and a feel for them helped me to recreate them. But it's important in this book that the reader be transported to those places and to be able to feel as though they're there and not just on Main Street, USA.
Well, that's right. I want you to talk about the two dirty cops a little bit, because in many instances, they're just kind of a comedy of errors, and it isn't funny.
Well,
they make some pretty bad choices, those two guys.
Well, they do, but that's what drives. You go back to my question that I start with: what happens when things go wrong? And neither of these guys were born bad.
No.
Okay, they weren't born bad. Oh. And one of the fascinating things to me to do as a writer is to take characters and see how they change, how what might seem like a simple choice, not a bad choice by itself, maybe it's only a little bit bad, or maybe it's only a little bit questionable, and then it does become that slippery slope. And there's a terrific book that I read, nonfiction, that I think a lot about when I write these characters. And the title of the book is "Mistakes Were Made, but Not by Me." And it's about,
I like that.
It's written by a couple of psychologists, but it's about this very thing. How is it that somebody who starts out as a fundamentally good person ends up over here really, really in the soup?
And a lot of times they wonder that same thing.
They do wonder that
Yeah, they
same
do.
thing.
Yeah.
And so that all has to do with psychological principles of cognitive dissonance and self-justification and things like that. But that to me, makes the character more interesting than to just have somebody who born, live, and die as a Blackheart.
That's right. And neither of these men were. I
No.
mean, you can't help but sort of like them.
Right.
Even though you think, they did what?
Yeah.
Let's talk about Jack Davis a little bit more.
Okay.
Now, Jack Davis has a major disability,
Yes.
but he works through it, and he seems able to carry on. And talk about that disability a little bit.
Okay. Jack Davis has a movement disorder that is called tics, T-I-C-S. It causes him to, as I say, shake when he should shoot.
Yeah.
But it's a neurological disorder for which the cause is not known and there is no cure. And medications don't help a lot of people and can have bad side effects. So ultimately it's managed by lifestyle. And it's characterized by uncontrollable shaking, spasming that can affect the upper body, head and neck, and voice. And I have that disorder. And it just came out of nowhere when I was 51, 7 years ago.
And you were a very successful attorney.
I was going and blowing, as we like to say in the
That's right.
litigation business. And ultimately, I had to retire from my law practice because of that disorder.
And they don't know where it comes from.
No, and it's very uncommon. It's one of the lotteries you don't want to win.
Is it genetic?
No. It's not life-threatening, it's not life-shortening, but it is life-annoying. So when you asked me where my ideas come from, and I said it's about what happens when things go wrong, well, this presented me with a great opportunity as a writer to answer that question for myself. What happens when things go wrong? So I decided to create this character, Jack Davis, who led a much more interesting life as an FBI agent than I did as a trial lawyer, and explore my experience with this disorder through this character. And that's been a great experience for me.
Well, I'm sure it has, and it also points out that when something uncontrollable and not very pleasant happens, there's another road to walk. And you have found that and done something different.
We don't get to choose.
No, we don't.
But we do get to choose how we respond. And that's what was important to me with my new normal. And that's really ultimately the struggle that Jack has. And that's why I continued Jack's character in 2 more novels.
The next one's The Dead Man.
The Dead Man and then No Way Out. And the 3 together are sort of an arc of his adjustment to all of this, to how his life changed and how he was going to deal with that, and how he was going to validate himself.
See, let's pull that thread out.
Okay.
Validating oneself is extremely important.
Yes.
And if you had not chosen, if you hadn't had the talent to write, I mean, you chose what you were able to do and what you knew how to do. But the first book, you didn't really know, did you?
Well, this isn't the first book I
No,
wrote.
but when you wrote the first book, that
Yes.
was the way you coped with not being an attorney anymore.
When I wrote Shakedown, but Shakedown was my 5th book.
I understand that, but the
But-
first one you
Right.
started writing because you had a tic.
Yes, I started writing Shakedown because of that condition, and that was one way in which I chose to process my own
Of course.
my own experience.
And I'm sure you went through a lot of depression and why me and all like that.
You know, I never did ask why me.
Good for you.
And there are a couple reasons. I mean, why not me?
Yeah.
Okay, why not anybody?
Yeah.
And why me says to me that has an unacceptable implication, which is that it should be somebody else.
I see.
And it's a question that you can't answer.
No, it isn't.
So the real question is not why me, but what now?
What now?
Okay.
And you chose to write.
Yes.
But you were not sure it was going to be a successful choice, were you?
Well, I had started.
Had you ever written before?
This book, No Way Out, was published in 2008. My first novel was published in 2002.
Yeah.
So I had had the benefit of having started my writing career while I was still practicing.
That's
law.
what I'm getting at. You were still an attorney when you started writing.
Right.
And I didn't see. That's what I.
Yeah, and my decision to start writing was unrelated to my movement disorder because I didn't have it yet.
So Jack Davis was the first one that was related directly to the movement disorder.
Yes.
See, I wasn't sure how
Yes.
that
Yeah.
played out. Well, see, that's you made a good choice. You certainly.
I have no complaints.
No. So Jack Davis has 2 more.
He does.
And then what are you doing?
Well, I have a new book that will be out later this year, and it features a new character.
And what does he have a name?
Her name.
Her name.
Her name. She's a public defender named Alex Stone. And the tentative title of that book is Stone Cold. And she, as I said, is a public defender who, if she thinks her clients are really rotten people, she makes sure that they're convicted. And that doesn't always work out as well as she might have hoped.
You talked to me about self-publishing.
Yes.
And you do not self-publish now.
I'm starting to.
Because?
Well, my first 7 books have been published by a traditional publisher. But the publishing business has changed dramatically with the growth of the Kindle and ebooks.
And I told you, I have a Kindle. See,
well, in the month of February, there were more sales of electronic books than hardcover and paperback combined. The sales of the print books are declining. Electronic books will be the major source of books by the end of this year. And the economics of that are much more favorable to authors like me than traditional publishing.
Yeah, but you don't have to do the marketing or anything if they're on ebooks, though, do you?
You do market them. You have
but do you have to do that yourself, though?
Yes. But I pretty much had to do that myself with my print books.
Did you?
Because publishers don't do nearly as much of that as you might think.
I'm amazed. I would have thought that they would want to sell those books.
Well, they do, but they just have a limited promotional budget.
That's interesting. That is really interesting.
Well, we could have another visit and talk all about that another time if you'd like.
I would, yeah. Now, is the 4th one about the public defender, that's not the last one you have in the works, is it? You have
No,
a new
actually, my first 4 books in another series will be released this year as ebooks. And then I have the 3 Jack Davis books, and the Alex Stone book will be out later this year. And then next March, another book in my first series.
I think that's wonderful.
I do too.
I mean, I gotta hand it to you, Joel. I mean, you have truly. Have you gotten better as you've written more?
Oh, I hope so.
I hope so too. Well, you have to, because the more you do it, the more it is. And I was reading, and you at the end of your book, you thank Rabbi Moshe Berger at the Siegel College of Judaic Studies, and he posed the question, which is an interesting one, whether there is a commanding voice in suffering.
Yes.
And the answer is yes, and the command is to live well, live fully, and live righteously.
Yes.
And I think that is an absolutely beautiful sentiment, and I think that I would have to say, as I thank you so very much, Joel Goldman, the author of the Jack Davis novels and others as well. Read Shakedown. You'll like it. And I like mysteries, so I'm telling you, it's okay. Writing this book, I think Joel was one small step in fulfilling that command.
Yes, I feel that.
I do too. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for being with us. We meet such interesting people because it's our community. I'll see you again soon.